If you want to start or scale your property development business to 8 figures and beyond, then you're in the right place. This is the Property XPerts Podcast with Ben Richards and Jack Jiggins, two serial entrepreneurs bringing weekly insights from our award-winning businesses. In these podcasts, you'll learn how we found, funded and delivered over £80 million worth of property in the last 6 years, with templates you can use, deal analysis and deep dive discussions that will help you build your businesses successfully. We hope you'll enjoy. Hello. Welcome to this week's episode of the Property XPerts Podcast with me, Ben Richards, and Jack Jiggins, my business partner. On screen today is when is enough enough? And we're going to be going into a lot of detail around that. It's something that developers get caught up with quite a lot. So Jack's going to be running through his thoughts on that topic. On the agenda today, it's 13th of March, 2026, when to draw the line with a site. Preparing for 3 sales launches. We're going to be very active in April. So if you want top tips around how to set your project up for success on a sales launch, I learned from the best at the Berkeley Group. So stay tuned for that. Multiple tip-offs on a site. When a site has gone around the houses, what to do when you see that. We're recruiting again. We've got a couple of positions open, so stick around. And we are relaunching our Boardroom, and we started last week, I believe, on the outreach. We got a couple of guys that are working hard in our Instagram DMs, trying to build relationships, build new following, and bring new people into our Boardroom to scale and grow their development businesses alongside us. Closing deals legally. I'm intrigued by that. I don't know what Jack's going to be talking about there. So looking forward to that. And then driving your business via dashboards, which is something that everyone should be doing as a director of their business, as an entrepreneur, as a leader of your business. So we're going to be talking through some of the things that we put on our dashboards to help us oversee the business when we're not in the nitty-gritty day to day. 558 days to get a deal over the line. That is a long time. You got to have a bit of relentlessness and resilience in this game, and this deal that Jack's going to be talking about is exactly one of those. And then bit morbid to end, but life after death. I'm going to be revisiting the black box and what you need to be doing to get yourself protected and your family protected if you're building a big property portfolio. And as always, Q&A at the end, so get your questions down in the comments below. Whatever platform you're watching on, LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, whatever it is, get your questions in down below. If you're not viewing live and you are recapping this on YouTube, for example, you can still get your comments in. We won't be able to answer it live, but we will bring it into one of the future episodes. So yeah, get your comments in anyway. If you don't know much about us, if you're just tuning in for the first time, we are XP Property. That is our main business. We run a numerous businesses around that in the construction, property, design, surveying industries. But with XP Property, our development and investment business, we aim to deliver 1,000 homes and £1 billion in property in the UK. And we are doing that collaborating with trusted investors. We've got a couple of open investments. There's always something going on with our business. We have lots of toes in lots of different pies, and we are always raising from all fingers and toes. That's how many pies and gangly bits we've got to put into stuff. We've always got things on the go. So whether it's an investment from £200,000 up to £5 million, we've probably got something for you, whether it be on an equity basis, a debt basis, joint venture, mixed use, commercial, residential, everything in between. So if you're interested in UK real estate and investing with award-winning property developers and investors, then reach out to us. On a side note, with one of our other businesses, XP Surveys, it's one of the fastest growing tech-enabled geospatial surveying companies in the UK, and we're looking to raise £150,000 to supercharge that growth. We're doing about 500 grand in revenue at the moment, and within the next 2 years, we will be taking that to £2 million plus. So watch this space. We've got some exciting things coming in. If you want to be part of that process, we are open for investment. So reach out to see the deck on that slide deck. Cool. On to point number 1. Over to you.
Where to draw a line. This came about twofold just today. Once with our acquisitions guys, Stephen, working in our team, and also with a mentee who they use the phrase, they get analysis paralysis. And what I always say is the most important thing in acquiring acquiring a site is your own time. You've really got to value your own time, because you could spend 1,000 hours getting a site to the point of purchase, and you could spend 10 hours getting it to the point where it works, and then you keep compounding that energy that you throw into that project. So if you feel like your wheels are spinning and you're constantly looking at a lot of deals and they don't work, I would actually blame that not on that deal working, but on your process to execute your time in the best place and to water the right plants. If you look at like a talent provider for football or singing, they need to see a lot of faces to back the right horse. If you're just limiting the amount of things that you're getting your eyes on and spending too much time on one prospect, you're not going to have a successful pipeline. So it is very important to understand how to quickly draw a line. So if Ben goes to the next slide, I quite often see this process in the market. So a site comes to you, you book a viewing. You come back from the viewing and you start working on comparable data, gross development value work, DD on the site. You start working through the build costs. You start researching the project. You take a look at the title for any potential restricted covenants. And then you also look at the planning risks. Now, I'm quite bullish in the fact that I almost ignore every single one of these points to value my time on top of that. All of these things are extremely important to have as accurate as you possibly can before you purchase. And I'm not saying don't look at these things at all, because they're everything that you should look at. But the problem that I've just relayed here is if you spent days doing all of this work, when actually I've spent 4 minutes discounting that deal because I've looked at the high level numbers and it's so far removed from working, it's not warranting my time to spend on that particular deal. That means I've got 3 days better off than you to work on something else that might work. So it's all about phasing the process and knowing when to draw a line to something. You've got to be hard and fast with the project, not emotional. Get to the point where you know whether it's worth investing more time. And we typically phase that process. So if Ben wants to go on to the next slide. So yeah, initial review is basically what we do to warrant your time further beyond those things. So I'll give you an example. If you go on to the next slide, Ben. So this is a deal that came in this week. I actually really like the deal on the face of it, the location, the size, the type of scheme. It was a PD scheme. And within probably 3 minutes, so I haven't had to do a load of GDV work. I haven't had to really boil down the details of various different things that I've just mentioned. I haven't left the office. I haven't had to leave my home to go and waste a day viewing it. Sometimes there is benefit going on viewings to build rapport with agents that you really want to work with. That is another factor or another benefit on going on viewing. But we're quite bullish on making sure that the deal does warrant our time. Now, if you're watching, there's some figures on the screen. If you're listening, I'll try and walk you through them. So the way our spreadsheet is built is a lot of the things automate themselves. So pretty much all of the purchase costs, depending on the size of the project, the stamp duty is automated. So all I need to do really is put in the guide price. So for me to work out most of the purchase costs within a close percentage of accuracy, all I've got to do is put in the purchase price. Most of our professional fees are also automated on our spreadsheet. So, I mean, what I'm getting at here is if you have a really good spreadsheet, you improve your speed getting through, but that's not the principle. Then we go on to development costs. Now, the chat I had with our acquisitions guy, super keen, knowledgeable, happy to work through detail on the spreadsheet. He had broken down every unit number, every unit size, the circulation area, worked it out. Whereas all I did was took the gross internal area, minus 15% to take my sort of hallways communals as an average. And then I divided that by a blended mix of about 600 to 650 square feet per unit, because you have 1 beds, 2 beds and 3 beds and studios. So that then gives me an aggregated rough amount of units. So let's say for this scheme, it was about 20 units. So rather than spend all the time itemizing all the units down and showing exactly the size and really getting too hung up on that, I just work out a blended rate just to get the spreadsheet going and get a bit of an idea. And that will make more sense as I come on to. That's just the first ready reckoner initial review stage. The cost of sales is automated. Typically, you pay an agent's fee aggregated on the GDV, which is like 1 or 1.5% plus VAT. You may have marketing budgets in there. You may also have legal fees, which would budget about 1,800 quid per plot sale. So that's already automated. So all I've really done here is put in the build costs thus far to work out a general value. Once we've then got that together, I will go on a searching platform like Searchland or Property Data and do a residential sale value for flats in that area, get a blended rate. I know that that is not that accurate, but it's enough to tell you the story that you need to be told at this stage. And that got me to a GDV of 9.5 million. Now, already I know that we can't buy PD schemes at 55% on GDV. So even if that gross development value is 2 million light, the deal is still not going to work for us. So this is why you need to throw like initial review on paper, because it enables you to then go, this probably isn't going to work. And that took literally 3 minutes for me to come to that conclusion. And then if you look down to the actual profit after finance costs, which again is an automated section in our spreadsheet, it calculates the arrangement fees, the cost of finance, the exit fees, and also the S-curve on the development facility and the project duration. It essentially, this project loses £700,000. So for this to work, the GDV would have to increase by near on 30%. The costs would have to come down 50%, or the purchase price would have to come down 40%. I can tell you now, none of those three things are going to happen if I do more analysis on this site. So it already gives you a really short, sharp overview on deals that just don't work. 3 minutes in, 3 minutes invested. I would then go back to the party that sent me the deal or the agent. I would even be open to sending them this screenshot and say, look, how have you got to that purchase price? Is that expectations? Are you trying the market? And be naive. Come across naive. Say, am I missing something here? And they may say, well, your GDV seems a bit light. Have you got this scheme, or have you looked at this? Or, did you realize this part of the site was also included where you could put a Costa coffee on the corner or whatever it may be. So, but that then also puts the time on them to come back to you with feedback. Now, this is really just early stage, getting in and out, but the most important time to cut out of a deal is within the first 3 minutes, in my opinion. And what I would sort of implore you all to do is, when you are looking at deals, see if you can do this like initial review as quickly as you can. Build, foster that spreadsheet to be your aid to get to that point of discounting it quicker and quicker and quicker of every deal. We do this also with HMOs. I know what I can pay per bed in whatever region, because obviously HMOs are typically a cash flow mechanism, a cash flow strategy. Therefore, I know that the amount of bedrooms is integral to the profitability of a project. So if I know it's a 5-bedroom and a 4-bedroom or a 6-bedroom or a 7-bedroom, it's typically the same amount of chunks that you've got to pay per bed to get to that outcome, that you can work out and ready reckon that. So I can look at a 3-bedroom house, think, okay, I could probably get 6 out of this. And I know within, the areas that we operate, there's 3 or 4 different areas that in some areas it's 60 care beds, some areas it's 70 care beds, some areas it's 80 care bed. But I know that off the top of my head. I don't need a spreadsheet to go, nope, doesn't work. Nope, doesn't work. Next deal. And it's that speed which will enable you to sift through more deals. Granted, you may miss a deal. That will just happen. But the benefit is you get your eyes on deals that really are worth and warranting your time. So it was funny. We actually at the Future of Development conference, which I hosted, there was a developer that's delivered like £1 billion worth of developments. And the question was asked, what is the most important thing in acquiring a site? And I've been saying this for years. And he actually said, people waste too much time in the early stages and get too hung up or emotionally attached to deals and want to make it work. But if you value your time, you get to the numbers. If the numbers aren't warranting your time, you get rid of it. And the way that you can picture it is almost picture like it's a service-based business, right? So let's assume our surveying company, our measured surveying company, we get an inquiry in for a damp survey. There's no point in us trying to wriggle a fee out of that client. We're better off just to go, we do measured surveyors. That's not our bag. Why are we trying to deviate from what we do best? So it's to allow focusing on time onto these deals are your sort of key clients. And if you're not discounting them, if they're not a key client quicker, you're going to waste time and profitability and buy less sites. That's it.
Nice. Top advice, as always.
By the time we do buy a site, we do an unearthly amount of due diligence work, viewings, inspections. I don't know many that do, measure surveys before we've bought the site, planning schematic drawings, planning consultant involved, several other consultants involved. I would say we probably do more than most pre-purchase, but that is just the point of being like, yes, no, maybe, to then invest that time.
Yeah, and that is a good use of time, because effectively, as soon as you've got that under offer, you are de-risking your position and adding as much value to the scheme as possible. So good stuff. Cool. Point number 2. I mentioned earlier, we have 3 sales launches in April. I think there's pretty much two in one weekend and another one the following weekend after. On a Saturday, we are having effectively open day launches for 3 sites. That's being the Old Maltings in Abingdon, which will basically be selling. There's 23 units in total. We've exchanged on 7 of them. We're holding 5 of them. So that makes about 11 left to sell, basically. We've got St Andrew's Court in Tame, South Oxfordshire. That is the second phase of that development, which will be another 11 units. And then we've got Colney Hatch Lane in Muswell Hill, North London, which we have 9 units, of which 2 are already under offer. So between those sites, we've effectively got 29 sales available. And all of those sites will be finished within the next couple of months. So yeah, we're really sort of super excited now that it's coming to the end of these schemes, and we need to get rid of the units ASAP. Fundamentally, your profit margin as a developer is in the final 20% of units that you sell. So you need to get as many out the door as quick as possible, pay down your debt, stop all of that kind of holding costs of, on these sites, it's anywhere between 30 and 40,000 pounds every month that we are paying to the bank. So the longer it takes to sell, the more money the bank gets, which nobody wants. I'm sure you'll agree. So we are now preparing for those 3 sales launch. And I thought I'd give you a bit of a rundown of the types of things that we get up to during this process and how we try to get our projects into as good a position as possible to sell fast and sell for as high as possible. And just to give an insight, last biggest open day that we did was in January last year for our site in Marlow. We had 42 people view on that day, on that Saturday. And within 1 week of that open day sales launch, we had 5 of the 8 under offer at or above asking price. So, things have been tough from the sales market over the last couple of years. But if you can build momentum, if you can, create a bit of a buzz around the site, get people bidding against each other, then, you are in for, hopefully a good sales period. Unfortunately, some of those 5 fell away for whatever reason after those, after that date. But from a launch open day to be basically getting 3/4 of your properties under offer within a week, it's hopefully testament to kind of the process that we go through, the care we put into it, and how we delivered on the day. So what are we doing to prepare for these these 3 sites? And we're now 4 to 6 weeks away from the open day launch. And this is the point in which you really want to start going all guns blazing in terms of getting your marketing prepped, launching well on the portals, making sure that you've got all of your micro website up to date with all of the relevant properties that you're selling. So we have, and we've mentioned this before, I won't go into full detail, but on every site we have created a brochure PDF download. We've got a micro website that we've created specifically for these individual projects. So people can go on there, they can see all of the CGIs, they can see the floor plans of the properties that we've got to sell. We won't have any pricing on there, but we will say, this one's reserved, this one's reserved. And basically you want them to reach out to you to start discussing the prices and open the conversation around what they want and try to get them lined up for a viewing. So stage 1 effectively is all about building that momentum. So getting your Rightmove links updated and uploaded with as much information as possible. Hopefully a fresh Rightmove link. If you've done a soft launch beforehand, it's maybe a chance to renew or launch a different unit so that it's fresh and at the top of Rightmove. You can relaunch with new photos. If you've then finished your show flat, for example, you've staged it and furnished it like we have in this image on the bottom left-hand side, and you've got professional photos of that finished unit, that is obviously a brilliant place for you to be, where you can upload those actual images of the site rather than just CGIs. If you don't have that yet, then CGIs are obviously a second best, and there's great ways of using AI, like we've talked about before, to virtually stage dead spaces, or if you finish the unit but it's a white box, you can use AI to CGI stage that, virtually stage it, or you can send it off to a CGI artist to create actual CGIs of the space for use in your brochures. But by this point, we've got the brochures, we've got hoarding up, we've got site wayfinding, we've got micro websites. We've potentially even done some email launches to people that may have already reached out and downloaded brochures from walking by the site or seeing our hoarding, etc. But ultimately, you're trying to build momentum for that date. So you set a clear date, 4 weeks away. It's been big, bold writing in the Rightmove link, open sales day launch, this date, register below, etc. Building that momentum from a time frame perspective, I mentioned somewhere between like 4 and 6 weeks before the launch, you want to be getting everything lined up. Within a couple of weeks before the launch, you want to get the show flat completely cleaned, get any wayfinding or decals or whatever you want to call them, manifestations on the windows to direct people, and get that show flat looking tip top, basically. So within a couple of weeks before launch, you want to make sure that everything is in place and you've walked the site. And this comes on to point number 3, which is something we always talked about in the Berkeley group, and it's customer journey. So you want that customer journey from entering off the main road into your site to be as positive an experience as possible. It's clean, it's tidy. Things like we're doing at St Andrew's Court, for example, is making sure that we're actually putting some bollards up in some of the car parking spaces, because we do get a lot of local people use our car park to just nip into town, which we want to stamp out. So when people come into the site, they see parking spaces available. It's not people double parked in front of each other. It's a mess to get in and out, which people don't want when they move into a flat. They want free accessibility to their parking space. They don't want to be blocked in or fighting the neighbors for a space, etc. So you want the whole customer journey route to be good. And that includes things like, if you can, striking scaffold, moving all of that out of the way, making sure your site welfare is tucked away in one area and you've got hoarding up in front of it, or Harris fencing, so it's nice, clean and tidy. If you've got an approach through the site into your show flat, it's making sure that is as clean and as tidy as it possibly can be. Maybe getting some soft landscaping, planting, in place so that it makes it look as appealing as possible. Because people can often make their decision whether or not they're going to buy a flat before they've even stepped in that front door. So having that customer journey all the way from entering off the main road into the show flat as positive an experience as possible sets you up really well for when they see your finishes, they see your kitchen layouts, they see your bathroom, the bedroom, so all of that good stuff that they see inside of the place they're going to be living in is amplified by all of the stuff outside of it. So then it comes onto the show flat. We will try and furnish fully, 1s and 2 beds. If you've got 11 units, 9 to 11 units, you might want, it's going to depend on how many units you've got, how many show flats you create. 1 may be enough, but you might actually want to do a typical 1 bed. And then if you've got something quite special, like we have at the old Maltings, we've got the undercroft units where you've got the brick exposed ceiling, like you can see in this small CGI here. That one is one that we are going to be using for the show flat. We're furnishing that one, and we're furnishing a more typical 1 bed, which is on the first floor as well. So we're doing 2 show flats within that development. So the show flat needs to be as presentable as possible. It needs to be clean. It needs to be accessible. You need to have space for people to move. So what you want to be doing is staging some of those viewings. So you might have a slot between 10 and 2 o'clock in the day. So you're not having everyone turn up at the same time. That being said, you do want a little bit of overlap to give a little bit of the chance for people to get the fear of loss, if that makes sense. So you've got people that are gunning for the same unit, They might be viewing it at the same time. They overhear a conversation with the wife, with the son, with the daughter, whatever, where you know that they're going to be making an offer for the flat that you really want in that development. So at that point as a developer, you're going to have a bit of a bidding war going on, and that's really what you want to happen. So as well as having a show flat created, that's really important, because at the moment people are finding it really difficult to buy something where they haven't touched, felt, smelt, the whole kind of the flat that they're buying. An empty box really doesn't do it justice, or mid construction people can't quite see what it's going to be finished like at the end. So having it fully finished, ready, it is really important. And then as well as the show flat, it's giving people an opportunity to don their hard hat, to put their high vis on and actually walk the site. So if they're not interested in a 1-bed, which you've got as a show flat, they're more interested in a 2-bed flat. And that 2-bed flat is at a point in construction where it's safe to access. They can get a sense of space, how big it is. They can see the view outside the windows. Take them up to those units as well. So as well as showing them the finishes and what it will be, you're then actually giving them insight into the actual units that they're interested in seeing. So show flat, site tour, and then it's really over to the agents. Follow-up is crucial. Within that first week, it's really pushing everyone for putting their best foot forward, getting their best and final bids across the line if they do want to make some offers. It's also squashing any concerns around, if you've got some frequently asked questions that people are continuously asking. You would have to give your agent, good feedback and good responses to those FAQs so that you can squash any concerns as easy as possible. You might want to preempt some of those things, like how long the leases are, how is it heated, what EPC rating is it? Like, your agent should be prepped with all of those things without having to bother you afterwards, because these sorts of questions will come up. I think that's probably about it. Fingers crossed. That's 29 units that we really we want to get rid of ASAP. At the end of April, we'll probably do a bit of a deep dive in terms of how we felt like these three sales launches went. So make sure you sort of drop a subscribe, drop a like, and make sure you're notified for this podcast as it progresses, because we will be giving some feedback over the next month as to how these things are playing out and the sales that we get over the line. Anything you wanted to add, Jack?
Exit is super important. I'll also talk quickly about building the hype. Do you remember when we were hosting an investor site day at Sunset Court? Mm-hmm. And so we had 50 to 60 people on site, and a lady that hadn't yet offered on one of our units, who was planning on putting her foot forward, just sort of nipped by to see it and sort of remind herself of what it looked like, saw 60 people walking around the units, then immediately ran down to the estate agency and made the offer. And it's that demand that you're building up from these sales launch, and, getting, people on site to build that healthy competition, and to sort of get people to, go, wow, this is really nice, and I can kind of see why other people are interested. Let's just crack on and do it. So,
yeah, fingers crossed.
Multiple tip-offs on site. So this was actually a message that came in today. I won't share what the building is, but essentially we talked about this a bit today. So when you're in acquisitions, sometimes I am a little bit gutted when I get sent the same site by multiple people, if I like it, because I then know it's everywhere. It's being casted really far and wide. But subtly, it strokes my ego a little bit that I think I'm getting enough fed to me from other areas, that you've kind of done a good job of being well connected, and you are getting a good pipe of deals from various different people. So it's kind of like a backhanded compliment, or whatever you want to call it. But typically for a site, it's normally a negative for me if it's going around the houses, because then I think to myself, what can we do here that other people can't spot? And it just makes that barrier for entry or the task a little bit more challenging. I love it when it's just a small group of people that are interested, if not only just us. You have a little less pressure. I mean, even talking just before on the site open days and building demand. So it was quite a comical one. So if you're tuning in on Spotify, I'll read the messages. So a contact said to me, "Hi Jack, I've got a site. Here it is. Here's the details. Are you aware of it? Would it be of interest? And I replied, hi, James. Been offered this half a dozen times already. We used to own the site next door. Expectations on price need to halve. And his response was laughing face. Good to know. And, you know, it just sort of made me think, you know, these sites that are doing the rounds are typically not, you know, there's I wouldn't necessarily say there's a problem with them. I'd just say maybe expectations are too high from a price point by the seller. Maybe it is a really complex scheme and it's not actually priced correctly. Maybe there is something wrong with it. So this particular site, I literally have known about for about 6 years and it's still not delivered. So, I mean, I'm a big believer that if you can always offer on everything, and even earlier on the episode when I talked about drawing a line, I still kind of make a proposal to an agent. I would give them a soft offer on that previous deal where it was 5.5 million, and I think it's got to come down to like 3.5. I maybe not go in at that level with the agent, but I just sort of say, look, I can't make this work at that value. It's got to come down significantly to be of interest. Let me know if that is an option. But as these sites are doing the rounds, it's not that attractive for you if you know you're competing with a significant amount of people. But it is a little bit of compliment in the process because you know that 2 people have thought of you when sending you this site. So I just wanted to share that little funny one, but also give my view on sites doing the rounds.
Cool. We mentioned last week, if you're not tuned in, around the employee net promoter score around XP Surveys and XP Property. That is basically a mark of how your business is doing from your employees' eyes. So, you know, they ranked us on various different scores. You know, ultimately, would they promote our business to other people in terms of working for it? And thankfully, you know, we scored an average of 8.4-ish over the last 3 years, which is amazing. You know, an average, you know, our team are net promoters of our business, which is exactly what you want. You know, you want people bringing in new fresh blood from inside, you know, telling people how good it is and how much people outside should want to work for the business, which leads us on to 2 positions that we are currently recruiting for. So I think I mentioned this a couple of weeks ago. We've got a sales exec role in XP Surveys. I went through the full investment deck a couple of weeks ago in the podcast around us raising £150,000 to supercharge the growth within that business. And part of that business plan is bringing in a sales executive to bring on board new architects. You know, predominantly, you know, architects for us are amazing lifetime value. They are our key avatar clients. You know, they are repeat business for us regularly, and ultimately a massive part of how we're going to scale this business growing forward. So if you're a sales exec, you want to work for an amazing company with an amazing team with amazing vision and goals, then we would love to speak to you. So head over to XP Surveys on LinkedIn. You can view the job role on there and do all of the applying and all that sort of stuff on that. What we'll be launching in the next couple of days is a secondary one. This is again to help the growth of XP Surveys, but also to bring in some new marketing blood to Aura Architecture. So this would be a sort of split role, similar to the digital marketing person that we brought in a couple of months ago, split between Aura and XP, to help out with the social media side of stuff. You know, we have great videography, great reels and content that we're bringing out across XP Property, but we need some more of that within XP Surveys and Aura now that Dan, my marketing guy in Aura, has stepped away from 5 days a week just down to 1 day a week to focus on his own business ventures, which is awesome for him. But we need to kind of fill that role within Aura. So as part of the growth of XP Surveys, we need somebody to help out with that social media side stuff. And Aura has an amazing Instagram channel that's now on like 12,000 followers. We're on about 4,500, 5,000 followers on YouTube for all of the video tools that we create. And I want somebody to really supercharge that social media side of stuff with both businesses. So yeah, if you're sort of 3 years experience into social media marketing, and want to work within the property, within the design and construction space, then reach out, DM me. This isn't live yet as a job advert, but it will be in the next couple of days. But ultimately, if you want to get a jump start on this and you're tuning in and would want to work for us, then reach out via DMs.
The Boardroom. So during COVID, actually way before COVID, I think I joined the first Boardroom that I was in about 10 years ago. That makes me feel old. But the beauty of a Boardroom is it's not a lot of property education companies in the UK are sales machines. Whereas I feel that they give you just enough information to be dangerous and not enough information to deliver. So what we did, Ben and I, we both independently joined 2 independent Boardrooms. And leading up to COVID, they both kind of deceased or flaked out. And that is quite common for, the Boardroom. People move on, do different things. Some people move out of real estate. But I've built lasting relationships and business relationships as well as personal relationships from that original Boardroom that I was in. And it was integral to pull back the curtain on the business, find the bottlenecks, get the second opinions. I actually loved being in the Boardroom that I was in because I was in my early 20s and there were some really heavy hitters in that room. I almost felt nervous every time I was going to do it, but the how elevated you feel coming out when you've really made traction in strategy, focus, goal driving, problem solving, firefighting. It's a very lonely place often, business ownership, property work, and having that almost like impartial board of directors that are rooting for you, and you're the same to everyone else, was fundamental to our business growth to get us where we are today. So during COVID, Ben and I weren't part of any Boardrooms anymore, and we thought, let's just do our own. We're all sat at home on Zooms. The amount of like Zoom events I would attend just because I was so bored. And we kicked off the Boardroom. So now that's almost 6 years ago, I believe. We've had some really good turn of groups events where, people come together, get to know each other. A lot of our board members have gone off being friends, gone off to do deals and amazing things. And actually, it was quite coincidentally, one of our board members has gone up and set up a boardroom, which is amazing. Everyone grows in those environments and gets down to the detail and gets the real nitty gritty of the month-to-month activity, accountability, strategy, and focus that is needed to be done. So this year, we're really looking to re-recruit the right rooms. We're doing a minimum of 2, and they will fill up pretty quickly. I think the first Boardroom we ever did, we filled it out to the first 12 people that we sent it to. So if you are interested in getting traction this year and building that strategy and focus for what I believe is quite good value for money, for the value return you get, you will need to donate half a day a month to that strategy day. But the value you'll get off the back of it, the sort of instant contact community, the accountability that we run through, the deal focus and the deal room that we look at, the hot seating around business strategy and ideas and changes, certainly make it worthwhile. But anyway, if you are interested, either comment Boardroom or DM myself or Ben or even our company account, and someone in the team will reach out to you to sort of engage with you and let you know what it will entail. And we're more than happy to also jump on a call if you have any questions.
Nice. And if Boardroom is your next step, but you enjoy listening to us every week and get free value this way, imagine the amount of value you will get from the Boardroom, where it's more intimate, one-to-one coaching and live deal analysis, etc. But if you stick around on this every week, thank you very much for tuning in. If you're listening on audio via Spotify, Apple Podcasts, etc., we would love for you to rate us, to review this podcast. We launch the audio content Monday at 5 a.m. We're live every Friday via video format across YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, sometimes Instagram, where we are live showing people on screen all of the stuff that we're talking about. We then repurpose it in audio format and release that on a Monday at 5 a.m. But if you get value, which we know you do, please share it with people that you think would also get value, business owners, property developers, serial entrepreneurs, and we want to spread the word as wide as possible. So do us a favor. Closing
deal legally. This sounds really grabby, doesn't it? But it's not that exciting. it was actually just to share that when you're in the last stages of getting a deal over the line, honestly, you forget what you've signed. There's just been so much crap that you did sign, but now it's changed and you've got a different document. And we've even had it where we've driven to the lawyers, signed a document, driven home, and then they called us and said we missed a document. But just a top tip, really, before you post anything, scan it first, because then at least you have a copy on file. And we would have actually completed on the deal today that's taken 558 days, a day sooner if we would have scanned a document before posting it. So just a little friendly reminder to have all things scanned for your own folders, but that, you know, we would have actually, with that tracking number and scanned doc, it's not really an issue, if I'm honest, because, you know, we're not in notice of the contract. We had a fairly flexible date and a good relationship with the vendor. But just a tip, before you post any legal documents, scan them. I actually use a app called Scannable. We do have like one of those printers where you can put the docs in and it prints and it scans it all out, but I'm pretty lazy. I just scan the signature page and then addend it to a DocuSign document, so it looks exactly the same, and would be exactly the same if you reprinted it or looked at the original. It just for our own filing, and then obviously send the wet ink originals to the lawyers or whoever it needs to go to. Also, make sure you check the destination it needs to go to. Sometimes it's pointless sending it to your own lawyer because then they have to send it on to another lawyer, is another top tip as well. So we actually did that. We bypassed our solicitor and sent it directly to the bank's solicitor without our lawyer having seen them. But with a scanned copy, they can see a scanned copy.
Nice. I use Tap Scanner if anyone wants a alternative.
I love Scannable. It's very good.
Yeah, I use it a lot for most of the stuff that comes in via post, just as a record.
It's probably actually worthwhile explaining what a scanner app is. So if you took a photo like this image here, one, it wouldn't be square. Two, you would have like almost yellow lighting, is quite common you get on documents. You might have shadows in it as well. The scanner app typically on my phone puts on the torch, and on white paper that works really well. It gets rid of all the shadows. And also it then like basically, like, I don't know what it does. It like corrects the document, it crops it, and it makes it look like an actual scanned document. I think it kind of like increases the brightness and also the contrast in colors. So it's only picking up the paper and the words rather than all the shapes and shades that are going in. I know I'm sounding really anal now, but it does look really sharp when you scan them in.
Yeah. You can choose on Tap Scanner sort of whether you want it kind of perfect or slightly different contrasts, different brightnesses, depending on what looks best. You know, if you need it full color, if you can have it black and white, you can sort of choose between them. Cool.
Good.
All good. Cool. Yeah. We've got an extra referral code for you guys. We always bang on about Xero, and thanks to those that have used this. I mean, you'll be thanking us, no doubt, in 6 months' time when you've got your head around Xero, because it's such a useful tool for your accounting, bookkeeping, and financial management. So we've got 90% off 6 months down below via the bit.ly link. And we've added a new referral link down below, which is for capital on tap. You know, cash flow is king in any business, and having the ability to have a, you know, Amex or a capital on tap card where, you know, you can draw down sums to use for cash flow within your business. You can extend your payment terms by using this. If, you know, with developments, money comes in and out like it's water, and you might have a cash flow squeeze in one business for 2 weeks, knowing that you've got a sale completion or a refinance happening, but you know, you want to drag out an invoice payment for those 2 weeks, for example. Something like a capital on tap card is brilliant for that, and you can get 7,500 points using our referral promo code below. With all of the capital on tap, you earn 1% cash back, and you can basically trade points for money off your balance if you want to. And there's huge amounts of other additional benefits of using it as well. So if you haven't got yourself one, it's very, very good in any type of business to have that, you know, extra capital available to you via a capital on tap card. Cool. I mentioned accounting software with Xero. As a business owner, and I've had this conversation with a few people this week in terms of wanting to scale their businesses from 200 grand revenue up to £1 million in revenue, and how they're able to do that and get off the tools and get into a position of directorship within the business. So you're no longer operational, you're thinking about working on the business, not necessarily in the business. And to be able to do that, you need systems, you need processes, you need team. And in order to keep an eye on all of that stuff that's going on, having some form of dashboard that gives you the key KPIs and metrics within your business, so you as a director can get a quick snapshot, is super important. As a director of numerous businesses, we are pulled from pillar to post every day, with people's attention left, right, and center. So, in terms of your management of the business, you don't have huge amounts of time to drill into the detail of everything. So you as a driver of your business forward need to have some form of dashboard that helps you see a very clear picture and spot indicators that aren't necessarily going in the right direction really quickly, so that you can dive into the area of the business that maybe isn't quite working as you expected, to then solve problems that there clearly are within that business. On screen, I've got a snapshot from a couple of months ago, it is, I think, or last month's, on the Zoho dashboard. So we've got a CRM within Aura, which is via the Zoho platform. It does all of our front end sales pipeline process, but then it also goes then into our project management tool as things progress through planning, building regulations, on-site tender, all that sort of stuff. But my director dashboard for me, I've got an ops director that manages the day-to-day and the team and the delivery. For me, the important factors are: how many inquiries are we getting? How many fee proposals are we getting out there? How many of those fee proposals are we converting into jobs? So my director's dashboard, key things that I want to know is how many inquiries we've got in, what level of inquiry have we got? We focus on higher end projects. So we want to see projects that are probably, £200,000 plus in terms of inquiry level. And you can see on here, we had 53 inquiries this month, but 35 of them were at the lower than £200,000 level. Now, I'll caveat this with clients. These budgets are given to us by the client. And what normally happens is, if they say they're in a £125,000 to £200,000 contract budget, realistically they're 250, 300 to 350, because people don't generally know how expensive things are nowadays. So although it looks like they're quite low value inquiries for us, the reality is that some of those will be actually more than what the client thinks there are. But this is a really easy snapshot for me to see, are we getting the right type of inquiries? Where are we getting those inquiries from? You can see that 21 of the 53 inquiries were direct via email or phone into the office. We had 8 good inquiries come in from Google Paid. So again, I can see that our Google marketing is working well and generating leads. And then SEO from a Google organic perspective was 15 out of the 53. So this is all tagged, this is all tracked. This is a very quick way for me to understand how my business is ticking. And if I showed you 4 months ago this director's dashboard, and I showed you that we had 35 inquiries, at that point the business was struggling. I've been on this podcast saying, we aren't getting the inquiry levels, we aren't getting the conversion rates, blah blah blah. Luckily and thankfully, we put a lot of effort into kind of changing that around, and we're now back on track. So my metrics, I know that as a business owner, I've set these metrics effectively. We need 45 inquiries a month. We need to be sending out 15 fee proposals, and we need to convert 33% of those, which is 5 jobs. So in this month, we did 53 inquiries, which is way more, 20% more than what our target is. We almost doubled the amount of proposals that we sent out. We sent out 27, but our conversion rate was still only about 20% instead of 30, 35%. So we still need to do a bit of work on converting those leads as they come in, and the inquiries that come in. So yeah, if you are a director of your business, you need to be having a very quick snapshot of how your business is performing, finger on the pulse, so that if you do see some things not where they need to be, you can then jump into the detail, find out why, and hopefully turn your business around.
558 days for this beauty. I know what you're thinking. You're incompetent, Jack, and you're not wrong. So the blame of this slowness is not actually because anything was that slow, really. Well, apart from planning. So this is a grade 2 listed property that we're completing on today. And essentially, we agreed a conditional contract, which took a bit of a while to negotiate. So the 558 days is actually from the very first time we viewed it all the way today to getting it complete, which is crazy. That is almost 2 years. But if I explain why, it will make a bit more sense. So as it's a grade 2 listed building, if you are watching visually, there was an extension built on which the heritage officer did not like, which the previous owner did. So they got themselves in a bit of a tricky spot. They did a single story rear extension probably 10 years ago would be my guess of when it was done. I'm sure it's on the planning. Like, this is how long ago I haven't looked at the planning portal for this house. I don't even know when that was submitted, but I know when ours was submitted. So there was a problem. There was essentially, it wasn't an enforcement against the building, but they were on the radar that it wasn't really how it should have been done. It obviously gives you a bit of an overview that they do follow up on these things and they do chase you down. Anyway, Central Suites come in with our red cape to save the day and said, look, we've got the expertise and the money. We'll buy this off you subject to planning. And then you don't have to worry about it because it's not a saleable asset with the current enforcement openings, because you have to declare those in the legal process. Well, you can't lie in CPSEs, so you might get away with it. But anyway, and fun facts for everyone, crossing the line with planning is typically redacted, or you have an enforcement to remove the property or change it. But with listed buildings, it's actually criminal. So it's very, very naughty. But we came to the solution. We did a easy for you to say, a regularization application to reduce the size of the single story rear extension. We got a specialist heritage architect who I'd highly recommend for small projects like these. And it went through with flying colors. The application was well received. There was quite a lot of questions, which was one of the reasons that we had a long stop and a delay. But we've now got the consent and we're pushing forward to get the thing bought. I feel that there's been quite a few months delayed by lawyers, and that just is quite common nowadays. We've gone from being able to get a mortgage offer to getting something refinanced within like 4 weeks. I actually had one of those the other day in 4 weeks, but it's rare nowadays. And now to being like 4 months is the norm, which is just ridiculous. Like, why does that take that long? Anyway, the latter delays have been legals, but we're pretty much there and ready to go now. And this will be the main line of works, is to demolish the single story rear extension with care, build what has been regularized. So essentially we are removing all of the heritage problems that were encountered from the previous owner. Another thing I'd say about heritage buildings and not doing it correctly is the liability doesn't fall with the person that did it. It sits with the asset, which is why this person couldn't necessarily probably sell this to anyone else that was willing to do a creative structured deal. So we're going to do all of that work, modernize it, put a new kitchen in, new flooring finishes, new doors, etc. The doors are not listed. And we have also chucked in a cheeky planning application to put a skylight in the loft and to convert it to a 6-bed HMO. But that was just as a backup, just to see how we get on. But there you go. That's it, really.
Nice. Interesting history. Sometimes these things take time, right?
Yeah.
And that is a long time.
We need a pipeline.
Yeah. Cool. On to more morbid things. Really sorry again. If you tuned in a couple of weeks ago, I went through this in way more detail than I'm going to now. But I just wanted to say that we've brought the black box, we brought a cash at On Point Mortgages into our list of affiliates. We're just finalizing some details now. But if you want a review of your current situation in terms of wills, protection from critical illnesses, key man insurance, and ultimately, it's when a family member passes away, it's really, really tough if you are the person trying to coordinate essentially their life, if they're really unorganized and don't have things all in one place available, to understand where their pensions are, to where, you know, they had a little savings account that nobody really knew about that you need access to, and all that stuff with the black box is all pulled into one place, all, you know, protected and ultimately set up to protect your legacy or your family's legacy, depending on, you know, where you are. But ultimately, Akash will do a free audit with you. It takes no more than half an hour to understand your situation, where the holes are within your bucket, whether that be before before death, i.e., you know, personal protection of life insurance and key man, all that sort of stuff, how to protect your family home, you know, after death, how to protect potentially your family's income, and how to protect, you know, longer term from an inheritance tax perspective, and all that good stuff. So if you want an audit with the black box, drop us a line. We will get a referral link over to you to book in with Akash for half an hour to deep dive in terms of finding, you know, where you have holes in your family's protection and your protection. Cool. And then question from Jace. You had a consultation. You did a mentoring session with him today, right? He's 16 years old and superhuman.
He's polished, that young man. Well ahead of his years. Love it. Absolutely love it. He's really dialed down with I suppose it's do you know, can you remember that James Sinclair said, like, when people start using your phrases, you know that you've done a good job of, like, getting your presence out there. No, he didn't use it. I don't think we've got any phrases because we're not weirdos, but I feel like he came very XPE, like he knew what, you know. I'd be like, you could always let him finish off my sentence, and I'd be like, yep, you've watched that episode.
It's because he's been through almost every single episode, I think, on
I love it.
on our YouTube back history.
Yeah, really nice guy. He's got a deal under offer, which is quite exciting, a new build site. So nice. Rooting for him to get that one all wrapped up and underway. The question from Jace is, which funds do you use to fund planning for these projects when getting them subject to planning? Do you use investor funds or company cash reserves? I'll answer that bit first. So the actual episode, I believe, was the dual offer secret, which is if you offer an unconditional bid and a conditional bid. So that deal that I was just talking about, which is a conditional purchase to planning, you run the planning, you exchange on the site, and you run the planning at your own risk, essentially, to lose the planning costs. But when you then get satisfactory planning, you can buy the asset. And there's many ways that you can fund those. You could fund it yourself, which is good if you typically have some form of planning uplift in that process. And then that should typically mean that you benefit from that planning uplift. So to give you an example, we've bought sites subject to planning. By the time we've got the planning, it's worth £200,000 more. That should really be you at the benefit of that if you are the one that's funding it, as well as finding it and delivering that planning. You could request your investor to fund it. A typical ratio for an investor that we've seen in the market is to double their capital on a planning play. You don't really submit planning unless you're like over 75% confident you're going to get it, or your planning consultant is that confident you're going to get it. So the odds are there in your favor. If you do 3 of those and you get a double kicker and one goes wrong, you're still in the net profit. But we typically actually do a triple capital return because we probably have a little bit of a leaner cost to do that anyway. In our spreadsheets, what that looks like is if we're buying a site subject to planning, we will typically, and it costs us 20k, we will allocate a 40% margin just to get the planning and to risk that capital ourselves. Or you could split it 50-50 with the investor, which is quite an honest way to do it, especially because then you feel like you're contributing to the same risk. Once it's then de-risked, get the investor to put all the money in so you can do more deals with your own capital. That's all I had to say, really. And for someone starting out without a cash pot for planning, is it better to stick to stuff with full consent in place and find a competitive advantage elsewhere? If you don't have cash reserves for planning, how have you got cash for deals? So I'd just find the money, I think is my answer to that. What do you think, Ben?
Yeah, I mean, there's a few things that you could. We within Aura have done a few kind of success fee type deals where we've taken some of the risk to bring the capital and the experience to deliver the planning side of it. So befriend an architect that thinks a bit more commercially, has some development experience like us, or ultimately, find the investment. One thing you could potentially do is take a deposit from that investor. So it might be that you've got 250 grand going in the deal, but to get going, you need a 25% deposit from that investor. It means that they're motivated to to secure the deal effectively. Otherwise you might have to go elsewhere. And that £25,000 is the soft costs used to deliver the planning application and pay for other bits and bobs going on. So it doesn't always work. Some investors aren't keen to do that, and a lot of investors may not want to take planning risk. So it's going to be very dependent on who you're working with. Working on schemes that are fully consented, the advantage for you there is, one, if you've got cheap debt or if you've got cheap investment, that's going to be a good advantage for you. Or if you've got a construction company, in-house, or run a construction company, those are where your competitive advantages are going to be. Now, not everyone's going to have those two points. It's quite niche to be having those 2 points. So to buy something with full consent in place, it's very rare that we will do that, because there's been a huge amount of value that has been added already. And generally, if somebody's gone through that process, they're going to expect more from the site, and probably more than you're going to want to pay for it. So a few options there. Hopefully that's useful. Keep tuning in to the sessions and making your way through all of the 4 seasons of the Property XPerts podcast. Cool. That's it for today. I hope everyone's enjoyed that. As always, please do like, comment, share with even just one person you think might get value. Will really, really help us. Have a good weekend, and we will see you next week. See ya.